I'm sending over.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Good evening, Facebook. This is Chuck John Carey with the weekly Better Savannah podcast show, talking about all things local here in Savannah. We are the area's premier independent expenditure committee focused on progressive policy outcomes here at the state and local level. Just a few housekeeping items before we have our show tonight. On next week's show, next week is the crossover day for the Georgia General Assembly. I believe it's on Tuesday or Monday. I can't remember which one, but on next Thursday, we're going to have State Representative Derek Malo and columnist George Cheedy from the Decatur-ish Magazine newspaper in Decatur, DeKalb County, Georgia. We'll be talking about the legislature, education, voting rights, all the things that have been going on in the Georgia General Assembly. So we're looking forward to next week's episode with those two guests. But tonight we are honored to be joined by the 1st District Alderwoman, the Honorable Bernetta Lanier. This is a candidate, one of the 6 candidates who won in 2019 city elections that Better Savannah endorsed. And we're excited to talk to her after the first year and a few months in office about all things West Side and hopefully a few bigger topics. So I want to turn it over to John, and we'll get started with our questions. But again, Bernetta, Alderwoman Lanier, we really appreciate you joining us here tonight, and we're looking forward to a great discussion. John?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Bernetta, and thanks, Carrie, for Carrie's co-producing and sending this interview and discussion out over the Facebook world to about 15 or 20 different pages. Bernetta, it's really a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And I just want to say personally that you know, I'm in awe of your leadership's cool. You're a steady hand. You're always on top of your figures and facts, and you don't get rattled. And I just want to salute and thank you for comporting yourself so well as an elected official.
Well, thank you, John. I'm glad that's the way it comes over.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Even if the local media never tends to agree, we'll see.
That's okay.
I just want to ask you from the top, what's your assessment? It's been 14 months now since you won your election and had an inauguration. Just give us a little bit on how the first 14 months have gone, Bernetta.
Well, okay, so look at me. Last year, this time I had black hair.
Okay.
So now I'm getting more like you. So, well, it's been an interesting year for everyone, and we could not have really planned this or guessed what we were walking into. And of course, right after we got elected, all ambitious and ready to go and all excited, and then there's COVID.
Right.
So that changed everything, and it changed our priorities. Of course, we got an opportunity to do our visioning sessions with council, and we got a plan or an idea of the things we wanted to accomplish throughout the entire term. We went quarter by quarter, and we decided, you know, what the vision was. But all of that changed with the pandemic, and learning how to continue to govern in that environment. However, with the pandemic and everything that was going on, being socially distant and working remotely, we still had to be responsive to our citizens and try to implement some of the ideas that we talked about, because most people ran on this change platform, and we needed to be able to institute or introduce those changes regardless of the environment and the landscape with the pandemic.
Gotcha. I want to follow up with you. I've got a copy right over here to my left. It's about 40 or 50 pages of title slides, PowerPoint slides from that 2.5-day visioning session over at the Civic Center. I was there with
You were.
y'all. And when you mentioned COVID, are we to understand that the goals are just being postponed, or have we totally dropped what was mapped out at that visioning session and we're just flying by wire right now?
I believe some of the items on the visioning board had to be postponed, just pushed back a little bit or moved around. However, some of the items had to change because post-COVID, through COVID and post-COVID, we would have to govern differently. We had to consider our finances differently. We had to consider some policies differently as to safety and health issues in the city. So both, John, to answer your question, some things were postponed and some things had to change.
Okay, fair enough. Just a random question here, because it was something I was working on today. And I know most of our conversation tonight is going to be about the Salvation Army project, because that's the most important issue with the vote coming up very shortly. However, just a quick question. On the 2021 legislative agenda, were you consulted at all on what you wanted to see as the priority items for the delegation to tackle in the session?
Well, we really did not spend a lot of time on contributing to our legislative agenda.
Okay.
Of course, I had some items that I had always advocated for, that I wanted to ensure that they were being addressed. And some of it is being addressed, but it would have been good if we could have spent a little bit more time discussing the legislative agenda. So we really didn't have a lot of input into that.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing. I made an open records request last week for all the documents or correspondence, excuse me, relative to putting this year's legislative agenda together. And I just got it back today, and from Joe Shearhouse, who fulfilled the request.
Yes.
And a quick glance at 5 or 6 documents, which is the totality of what I was sent, it really appears that Michael Brown put together the legislative agenda. Is that pretty fair?
Well, staff did put together the legislative agenda. I think they had some slight considerations to some things that were mentioned around the visioning. But really, we did not, as policymakers, have an opportunity to
have a strong hand.
fully
Okay.
contribute. Yes, that's true.
Maybe next year's legislative agenda, you'll have an opportunity to be much more council centric, and that'll be a great thing. Okay, yes. Listen, the first district, your district, I keep hearing that you've got some of the highest poverty census tracts in the entire city. Is that accurate?
That's correct. That's correct.
And how high is some of the tracts for poverty? If Savannah's running 26, 27%, is it true that you and Stella Shabazz in the 5th, you've got some areas that are 40, pushing 50% poverty?
That's correct. Of course, the first district is very diverse as far as income and areas of affluency and poverty. And the greater West Savannah area, that's where the poverty in the district is concentrated. And West Savannah averages 30% poverty, which is higher than the city, of course. But there are some areas, communities, neighborhoods in the first that has higher poverty than that. Based on some research that I did in the past when I was working with the gentrification task force and some other areas, Yamacraw, I think, was 90%, And there's some 80% areas in Cala Brownville and those areas. So of course, in the 5th and the 2nd, there were some areas or some census tract with high. The census, they categorize the poverty as high and extreme.
Wow.
So in the 1st district, there were lots of areas pegged with extreme poverty. So the 30%.
Alderwoman Lanier, can I follow up with you? There's been some differences of opinion about this between you and the mayor. I'm sure you're aware of your own comments, obviously, but the mayor seems to resent us calling the facts what they are about these census tracts and these data, and he seems to not want to call the West Savannah crisis what it is. What do you think about the mayor's hesitancy to use the words appropriately that describe the situation? He's pushed back against your language about the crisis of the West Side.
Well, of course, the mayor's position and my position is differently. Our point of view is differently based on our positions. The mayor is looking at a citywide landscape, and I'm looking at the landscape from the point of view of the 1st district. Being a 4th generation resident and very familiar with the entire history of the 1st district. So sometime as a leader, maybe he is practicing speaking things into existence, because if we really look at the data and allow the data to formulate the narrative, then we will be talking poverty, we will be talking wealth. However, of course, wherever there are the worst conditions, you're going to find the most opportunities. So that's the way I look at it. Yes, there's a lot of poverty in the 1st district, but I see so much potential and so much opportunity just based on those conditions.
Gotcha.
As a 4th generation, one more question, John. As a 4th generation resident, for the last generation, basically, the West Side has been represented by the mayor. You are looking at these issues. You were definitely pushing, the mayor to do the right thing when he was the alderman. I know that. But what do you think that legacy over the last generation of the West Side is, given that you're still seemingly battling the same battles?
Yes, we have been battling the same battles for a very long time. The last generation, my last generation, which was my parents' generation, they fought this fight also. So I was brought up in that environment. I was the kid who was drugged to those meetings in the churches for organizing, and the First Neighborhood Association is organized in my community. So I basically inherited the fight. I inherited the advocacy. And in the mayor's term as alderman, yes, I was the neighborhood president. I was an advocate speaking out against the whole West Side. I was sitting with some elders who was advocating for the arena 20 years ago. All right, Chuck, I saw that, those eyes rolling around.
Just looking at the agenda, we'll get to the arena.
So yes, I was the thorn in the side. I was exposing things. I was not happy with the direction in which our service was going at the time. And I was very vocal about it. And I do believe that advocacy and me being vocal and on the scene is what really led to me being elected to sit in the seat at this time.
Gotcha. Let's start talking about the infamous Salvation Army Transitional Housing Project. And for our viewers, that's a project to compose of 56 apartments. Is that correct, Bernetta?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that land is currently owned by us as taxpayers via HUD, the Housing and Urban Development.
That's correct.
Right. The zoning is actually residential. My understanding is it's residential. It's not zoned for apartments, high density apartments like this. And that's the reason the special use permit is necessary. Do I have that right?
Yes,
Alderwoman?
You're right. That's the gist of the issue. We would not be here having this discussion
Correct.
if the property was zoned to accommodate a shelter or the development that's being proposed.
Got it.
Salvation Army needs special use permit. They need
Okay.
special permission in order to put their project there because it's not zoned for such.
Okay, and I have heard you very consistently and very eloquently address the fact that your heart is one of a servant, and that the people who are stuck in transitional housing or homeless in need of housing, that you have deep concern
Absolutely.
for their plight. There is no doubt about that. But
Correct.
it seems, that some quarters are suggesting a NIMBY reaction. That is not my backyard.
Mhm.
I know that's not the case, but have you met with the Salvation Army to try to persuade them that this is not the right place for 56 high-density transitional apartments?
There have not been any meetings, or productive meetings. On last January, I did meet with the Salvation Army attorney. I was called and asked to come to a meeting to see a proposed development. But when I get those type calls, I do not like to attend by myself. So I tried to round up some more leadership to go with me. And I took the former West Savannah president, Ms. Pamela Howard Oglesby, who has been an advocate for West Savannah for decades, a very effective advocate, outspoken young lady. And I took Alderwoman Keisha Gibson Carter and Alderwoman Alicia Blakely, and we met with Attorney McCorkle in his office. And that was my first time seeing the plan. Of course, at that time, we did explain our reservations about the plan. And, it was so much that happened that should not have happened in the way it did. First of all, we were told that the plan was being constructed since 2005. So here it was 2020, and we're just seeing this thing. And some people knew about it all this time. And it's not a resident-driven development. The residents and the citizens, the impacted people of the area was not included. And so it's not our best interest, or the consideration was not made to the people that live in West Savannah, those generational people. And those are the people that I fight for. Those are the people that I advocate for. And it's just we're talking about community benefits. We're talking about building resilient communities. We're talking about sustainability and this project is the opposite of that. We want to inject it into extremely impoverished community with an average of 30% poverty. So we're going backwards with that. We're not keeping to our smart growth and development creed or that we talk about. It sounds good and it makes us look really good and smart, but it's not what we're doing. So if we wanted to be true to how we feel that growth should go in Savannah, being resident driven, citizen driven, making sure the impacted communities have a say and can negotiate for benefits for their community, none of that was done in this instance. We were told that the land was cheap and it's nothing over there. That's what we were told.
Thank you for that. My take on this, after kind of Googling the subject and reading what's available out there, is one of the primary objections or logics to this, that you've got a community that's been basically stagnant and ignored for the last 16 years. No big breaks going on.
Underserved, underinvested in, correct.
Yeah, underinvested in. Good choice of words there. And that when you take a whole lot of poverty, and then you add on top of it more poverty, which is essentially what the Salvation Army transitional housing
Yeah.
population is going to be, you haven't solved any poverty. You've only increased.
You've compounded the poverty.
Thank you.
Poverty plus poverty does not equal wealth or upward mobility. Poverty plus poverty, is negative poverty.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just more poverty.
It almost seems, and I'm going to say it. It sounds abusive to me, to the residents
It is.
of the district, to shoehorn in this project, given where it's going. It just
That's
doesn't.
right. John, being a public administrator and being an economic developer myself, as far as my training, and it just doesn't make sense. If you could design for outcomes, you could design communities for specific outcomes. And I don't know what that design will bring, but I do know that there are certain measures that we could take, and there are certain developments that could come there that will help to change the trajectory, the poverty trajectory here in West Savannah. And we could bring a different type development, and HUD even have a model of developments that they do just that. They try to build wealth, try to build upward mobility, or bring benefits to the community, the surrounding community. And this particular development that's being proposed, they're concentrating on the population they serve, and they should, but they weren't concentrating on the people who are already here struggling to try to change the trajectory, the 155-year trajectory where we started out behind, being here on the Royal Valley Plantation. And then there was the Weeping Time catastrophe, or that historic sale. And then there were municipal farms and sharecroppers. The people, our ancestors were sharecroppers in this area, and industrious enough and smart enough to be able to keep a little for themselves to purchase plots of land, and we still remain here today. So now this generation, my generation, as soon as we get a foothold where we have enough people with education, we have some people who, although the majority of people here do live in poverty, we have some people here who are examples of working themselves up from poverty, but decided to stay here. Some of us decided to stay put by choice, to stay in the community that we know and love so much. We are embedded. We're not just fly by night people, that we should be moved around. We are embedded here and have been here for so long that we're fighting. It's worth the fight. This is, our land and our community that we love. We love this city. And we see, because of these terrible conditions now, that we can turn things around. But as soon as we get to that point and get someone, or one of us like myself, elected, and then all of a sudden we're dealing with these zoning issues that is so similar to redlining and those type issues from the late 50s and 60s that were fought.
Alderwoman Lanier, you mentioned the arena earlier, and ironically, the same reason that we may have been on opposite sides of the arena issue is also the same reason we're on the same side about this Salvation Army issue. We had a different idea of what proper planning for that arena was. That ship has sailed. If you watched our show last week about the top 10 issues the city council faced for the first year in office, that was like number 8 on the list. And now that arena is being built, what sense does it make to put this project, as the crow flies 2.5 miles away, and more importantly, when the vast majority of other social services are located a substantial distance away from where the site of this project is, how is it that Salvation Army is serving its clients' best interests by placing this so far away from the corridor of Abercorn, Bull, Waters Avenue, Eisenhower, where the majority of social services are located for people?
That is another point, Chuck, that makes this not a very smart endeavor. because a lot of the amenities and the services that the homeless population need and were privy to and close to are downtown, around Wheaton Street and through the downtown area. And being on Montgomery Street, they were closer or in walking distance, so they're moving further away from those services. And you're also creating a transportation barrier for that population. Now, in terms of the arena, I don't think it's quite the same, and let me tell you why. Of course, the elders that I came up under, they advocated for an investment, a public investment, of course, because public investments attract private investment, because this area had been underinvested in. And therefore, that's why the poverty, not because the people weren't hardworking, not because people weren't educating themselves. So this community does not fail because of what we do. It fails because what is done to us. And that was systemic and structural bias through our government. And so those older people, I saw them in those meetings, they advocated for an investment to the local elected. And they were promised if they supported the SPLOST, that they would have an investment in the community. And that investment came in the guise of the arena. And at that point, did we need an arena? Not really, but we needed the investment.
Sure.
And so if that's what we could have gotten, if we had to take the arena for the investment, then of course, but the job was to make sure that that arena is the economic engine that is intended to be. Now, if we put the arena there and we do not place the associated policies in place to protect the people, then the arena could be bad as opposed to being the engine it should be. So now that the arena is going up, what I have been concentrating on is introducing policies. So we talked about the legislative agenda. And in the legislative agenda, and what I have submitted to staff to help shape and formulate, or some policies to protect the people, to protect the owners and to protect the renters. So what I am proposing, or exemptions, maybe for the lack of a better title, and it doesn't matter at this time, but it's anti-gentrification
Policy. What is it?
So some of those measures could help the people if they apply for the homestead and the Stevens Day exemption, but we need a little bit more, something with some teeth. And what I'm proposing is that if you in the opportunity zone or within a mile of the opportunity zone, then you will have an exemption on your taxes, to freeze your taxes at the 2018 level. And I'm saying 2018 because the Trump administration introduced the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that they worked on in 2017,
right.
implemented in 2018. And so therefore, that's when the opportunity zones were enacted in 2018. So what I'm proposing is that those taxes are froze at that 2018, because that's a 10-year possibly tax break for capital gains.
Is that something that Carl Gilliard and Ron Stevens and Senator Lester Jackson have indicated some support for?
I have not spoken to them. I have spoken to city staff about this and gave them some information that I wrote up and trying to get the city attorney to look at that to see how we could put some legal leads in there to make it happen. But let me finish telling you, so that should help the owners, not only residential, but business owners. And then I am also looking to work on some policies, and for lack of a better term, some type of rent control for those same people inside of the Canal District, the opportunity zone or in a mile radius. And what that would do is set percentage increases based on increments, like maybe every 2 years, your rent would not be able to increase
Or the 5% or
by a
something.
certain percentage. And then if you change tenants, and then you cannot go from $600 a month to $1,400 a month with the next tenant. And so these are the things, these are the policy initiatives that need to go in place that will protect the residents and protect the citizens in these areas. Then there are some more policies we need to put in place to make sure that the people that are doing business in the district and the developers in the districts are in a partnership with community development corporations and community development entities,
There you go.
and get form a partnership where they actually put money in the pot, and they could have those tax write-offs, so that community developer could find out from the community the consensus on what type of benefits the
I was
citizens.
gonna say, you read my mind. I was say, isn't that how we establish the community benefits that we
Absolutely.
want to agree to
That's
on
another
any of these major projects?
true, and that's another policy that I brought to council, was the community benefit strategic approach. And staff is talking about a community benefit agreement and doing some work on that. So after the Salvation Army thing that has consumed everyone's life for months now, we could get back on some of those things and try to get some safety measures in place to protect people, so it could be, so these developments could truly serve the citizens.
I've got two hard questions for you. And by the way, I think a mile is not enough. It sounds like you need to be double that. And
I think I told him 2. I did tell Bates 2. The original, I was thinking 1, but after sharing it, yeah, I think 2 would be more conducive. You're right, John.
Okay, Bernetta, here's my first hard question for you. You got 7 African Americans on council who virtually all campaigned on not doing business as usual and being better policy people, fairer, more inclusive, more thoughtful. Why is this an issue? Why don't you have the votes, or maybe you do? But I would think this ought to be a 9-0 vote, and failing that, it ought to be a 6-3 vote. I mean, what's going on?
I agree, John. I wish I could probably answer that, but you know, my position and the way I approach issues and try to represent, I have to first and foremost represent from the perspective of representing the people in the 1st District.
Of course.
Then the people in the entire Savannah. I'm always thinking about the whole Savannah, but those people in the 1st District voted for me and sent me to fight and work for them and represent them. So based on the conditions in the 1st District, what we have been doing obviously has not worked for the people of the 1st District.
Clearly.
And we're in walking distance, a stone throw from historic downtown Savannah. And no wealth has spilled over into greater West Savannah. So I definitely was running on a change platform, and we cannot do business as usual, because of course we all know insanity is when you do the same thing expecting different results. So when we came on council and we were all fired up and we came in and we were change agents, many of us, and we wanted to do things differently, what we were met with is business as usual. We were met with basically trying to whip us into the same old business model.
Yeah.
And exactly. And that's just not going to work for the people I serve. And I don't know how long I'm going to sit in that seat, but I'm going to have to leave it all on the table. I'm going to have to drop the mic and fight for my people, because we're going to have to get some things differently in place. Savannah cannot continue to grow and prosper if those people who work, the working poor, is not able to prosper. Now, I know these are the people who make the beds and wash the dishes and work at the front desk sometime. And I'm sure the powers that be are going to wonder what's going to happen if we if that population was able to really exert themselves and lift themselves up, and policies were able to change, and they supported that. But one time, a lot of those jobs used to be people's second jobs, because maybe they wanted vacation or a new car, and they would work those jobs. But now these jobs have become people's primary income. And so folks end up working 2 and 3 jobs because they don't pay enough to take care of people's families. So we know the story. We know the vestiges of poverty. But those 7 African Americans sitting on council, you know, we're not a monolithic people. And we all come from different disciplines and backgrounds. And and we all are influenced by different things. So
Yeah, but this is the heart. This is the heart of our city.
absolutely.
And you know, I've lived here almost 30 years. I've seen phenomenal growth, profits, prosperity, containers, college student
SCAD.
growth,
Yes.
SCAD. And the poverty rate is basically the same. Okay, so something, it's not working, and you can't say,
Right.
well, we haven't tried it long enough. You can't say, well, people didn't want to be helped. I mean, that's silly.
It's by
Okay.
design. I contend it's by design.
Okay,
And-
And Bernetta, I want to help John out here because sometimes the inner boomer in him comes out. I don't think we were suggesting the Black members of council were a monolith, not
No.
only because they're Black, but because we supported everyone except the mayor who is Black on council. We endorsed and supported every single one of you
because they were going to be progressive.
because they were progressive change agents during the election, right? They were advocating for a new relationship with the port and SCAD pilot programs, impact fees, resistance to the way SPLOST has been done, and all of those policy positions seem to be out the window for some on council, not you, obviously, but for some on council, that seems to have gone out the window. And I keep hearing coronavirus, and I understand life is different now. It'll never be the same. But at some point or another, we can't use that as the excuse not to progress forward, right? You would agree with that?
I absolutely agree. And let me say this, what I have learned, and because, my undergraduate degree from 40 years ago is in political science. When you're in politics sometime, and I hate to hear people say I'm not a politician, it's because once you ran and signed those papers, you became a public figure, you're in politics. However, politics, many ticks, many bloodsuckers. Anyway, when you in politics, you have to be a diplomat. It helps. I think it serves you if you be diplomatic. And next week, Thursday, a week from today,
Right.
I have an issue on the table that will change the character of Greater West Savannah forever. And it's not in keeping with the majority decision or the majority vision. And if I'm not careful, because we're dealing with personalities and we're dealing with people, we know the personalities. You watched us long enough to figure this thing out, that I am not trying to attack anyone, because I need my people to be able to have a development to come there that will lift us up and serve us and change the trajectory of West Savannah. So some things is better not said, and I'm sorry if that doesn't, get a lot of clicks for us here tonight. But I'm going to tell it like it is, but I'm going to try to do that in respect of even the people that I disagree with, because I even need, you've seen the split a lots of times on council with the 5-4 votes. It's not always 5-4, but on certain issues, you're going to see the 5-4 vote. And you might want to say 4-4, and with the mayor coming, bringing up the end and voting one side or the other, and it ends up one way or the other going to be 5-4. So next Thursday, I'm going to need 5 on the side of the people of Greater West Savannah. I'm going to need 5 on the side of people to say, I'm going to really look out for those people in spite of Bernetta for the future of that community. When we did the gentrification task force back in 2006, I believe it was, and I chaired that committee under Otis Johnson, we identified the neighborhoods that were prime for gentrification. And several of the West Savannah neighborhoods was on that list. And some other neighborhoods from the east side, probably the second and the third and the fifth. And with several of those communities have already almost succumbed to gentrification. If you look at gentrification in terms of changing the complexion of a community or changing the value, the income level of a community. Gentrification is an economic phenomenon. It's about supply and demand and the value. And But the worst aspect of gentrification is forced displacement. And that can happen slowly, or it could happen immediately. And so if we look at some of those neighborhoods on the east side downtown, they have gentrified. The income level, the income have changed, the complexion have changed. Now that same effort, that same gentrification trend is coming to the west side. And like I said, we're not transient people, we're embedded people. You know, we could trace our history back over 100 years and more in this area. And so where are we going? This is our home, so we have to fight for this, and we need policies, and we need the political will in City Hall to vote in the interest of the people, and that's what I'm after, and that's what I'm going to try to garner and gather next Thursday.
Let me, you
Go
know,
ahead, John.
when I served on the county commission, I know it was a million years ago, but I think these practices still hold true today. I represented the downtown district. The man I sat next to, Frank Murray, represented the islands.
Yeah.
Two entirely different communities in many respects. When there was an issue that was specific to Frank's 5th district out on Wilmington Island, I listened to Frank because it was his district. It was his people. It was his insight that I thought should prevail and influence my vote. I mean, obviously I get one of those votes on whatever that project is, but I deferred to my colleagues when it was a district specific issue that was pretty clear.
Yes.
So I just hope you enjoy that sort of esprit de corps or process in Thursday's vote, because I think it just would be rude and not good to you know, just for political or personality reasons obstruct something as important as this. Here's the other question I had. Salvation Army currently, correct me if I'm wrong, is over off Victory Drive and Montgomery Street. Is that?
That's correct, on Montgomery. And
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they own that property?
They do.
Okay. Was there not enough, if that had been more vertical build, could they not have created some housing, transitional housing units over there?
I do believe, John, since December, when we have been meeting weekly, the residents who are opposed to this meet twice a week, and especially on Sunday at 4 o'clock at the Solomon Temple Church on Augusta Avenue, like 2 blocks from the property in question. And in all of the meetings I have gone to and the people speaking out, I hear these great ideas, all these smart people. They're suggesting all of these things. Some people have traveled and they have seen Salvation Armies in other cities that they are vertical, they built up and they work. So it was so many options that were never explored. You know, we didn't have that conversation of that community input, because I'm sure we would have come out of there with some great ideas. I hear things that I didn't even think about. And then the 5th district is saying that, well, we're fine with the Salvation Army right where it is, and we want it to stay. And
because it's on a main corridor thoroughfare,
yeah,
which helps absorb the impacts of a project like that. When
Absolutely.
you put it nestled in to 3 residential neighborhoods. And again, I just fail to understand why a lot of people understand it. We elected this city council to be the planners. Yeah. You are the planners now. You know, I want to follow up on a question John was driving at with you, you know, about the districts. And you've been here a long time. You know, you've been paying attention and involved a long time. I believe this is the first city council where the majority is made up of all district aldermen and the mayor. I don't think that's ever happened before. Can you remember a time when a 5 or 6, 5-member majority was just district aldermen and the mayor? Because usually it's been a combination of citywides and a few district people. And this is the first time I can remember. And for this vote to take place next week, where 4 district alder people, men and women, override the sitting West Side district alderwoman on what they believe is best for their district. I think it sets a historic precedent that could be very bad for every other district. What are your thoughts on the history of this?
Yeah, I agree with that assessment, Chuck and John, and it is a best practice, I believe, when we allow the district alderperson to be the professional, and especially when you trust that they have done the work, especially when you know that they have been out organizing. The people that I'm representing, they have done everything humanly possible and that should be expected of
Sure.
responsibly civic people. They have met, they have walked door to door, they have done petitions, they have written letters, they have marched from the Weeping Time property to City Hall, they have picketed, they have reached outside of the city to try to get outside eyes on this. And it is disheartening because we're talking little old ladies, we're talking retired professionals, we're talking pastors, generational people. And when you see these type people come out of their homes and do this type of advocacy and work, I know I'm representing what's best for the people of this district and for this community. And I would hope that my co-council people respect the work. I have invited them to come in at times and they see the work, they see the people, they hear the cry out. And so the work has been done. Okay. And I know work, like prayer without work is dead. So we've done the work. So right now I'm telling my folks, we just, we've been praying, we've been fasting, we've done all of this stuff because this keeps us up at night. We're up, all night discussing this and calling and texting and praying and working. And I haven't seen anything like this because that's just how impactful this vote could be. And I begged my other city council peoples to please vote against that special use permit and please support the people. And I'm not above begging because that's just how important this is for this community.
Well, look, here's what we can do. And Carrie, if you can go and get the emails of the district alderwomen and men and the citywides and put them in the group chat here on the Facebook page. If you don't live in the first district, that's all the more important, right? If you live in the second district like I do, or you live in the fourth district or the sixth district or the third district, we need you to email your alderperson, your alderman or your alderwoman, and you need to message them and say, please do not vote for this special use permit because it does not fit the zoning, it does not fit proper planning, and it needs to go closer to the core of social services that are available in the rest of the city. I think if we could get a rush of 40, 50, 100 emails into these other alder people, that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back for making the final decision. So again, if we can get that in the chat, we're happy to help
us. So I'm asking your audience to please help us. And what's good for West Savannah was good, will be good for the city.
For all of Savannah, absolutely.
So goes West Savannah, so goes the city of Savannah, and all of the other conditions that breed poverty, that breed crime, all of those will be impacted by us being able to place the type development there that will bring affordable housing, some type of job generation, some type of technology training, some healthy food choices. And so this being the vision of the community and the need of the community, we had a developer come in and offer to draw up a concept plan for us, because in the discussion in the last couple of months, we were being criticized and folks were saying, well, you all don't want that. It's the NIMBY thing. You don't know what you want. Well, what do you want? Well, we know what we want, but we have been verbalizing that for so long that Mr. Rich Ferguson came along and with his team, they drew up a concept plan. Now, this isn't, and it has everything I just named, affordable housing and the job generation. But once we find a more amenable place for the Salvation Army, then the residents could come in, we could actually do the exercise to build consensus on finding out exactly what we want, because it needs to be, we need to have the input of the people on the ground. Now, and speaking to the city manager and asking him for his help in this, staff did come up with an alternative location, and that property is on Dooley Avenue. The city owns the property. It's right there off of Louisville Road, next to Stiles Avenue, going west. It's Stiles Avenue, and the next street west is Dooley. And it's 9 point some acres there that the city owned. And they were talking about placing modular houses there. And that was the conversation, John, you may have heard them talk about the modular houses last year in the vision and those sessions. Well, that property, it does not abut another neighborhood. The state's transition center was right there next to that property. So it's already zoned for a shelter. The railroad berm there separates it from West Savannah, and it's still a little bit closer to downtown, and there was no pushback. Now, what we were told after the city manager shared that possibility with council is that the land is low. The Ogeechee Canal is at the south end of the property, and the land would require some building up. And that building up might look like $1 million or $2 million. They're not sure, but the mitigation that needs to be done is typical when you have to prepare a property for development. So if the city decided to do anything, they would have to mitigate that property and spend that money.
We cough up $1 million or $5 million or $45 million for every hotel developer, anybody around here. So I don't understand why we couldn't pop up $1-2 million for that.
We spending all these millions on a parking lot and the Kessel building. We did all of this. Those Weeping Time enslaved people were sold for 300 and some thousand, which is 9 million in today's market. So, hey, let's try to get some equity and let's try to do things right so Savannah could become whole.
Yeah,
we're so broken, and we're still doing things to pour salt in the wound. But this is a big one here, and anyone that votes. Anyone that vote against the welfare and the future of the people of the West Side by voting to allow this use, they should be removed from office because they have no heart or no understanding.
Tell them how you really feel.
How great that impact,
a pox on their house,
negative impact that would be. And if I did something like that, remove me. If I went against the people like that and changed the trajectory and impact the culture of a community and put something on the community that's going to take decades, remove me because I'm unfit.
Yeah, it's a litmus test for many on council.
Absolutely.
It's a moment and a defining moment. Let me ask you another question that's really got me confused, Bernetta. Last week, y'all decided to give the Visit Savannah an extra 2 cents on the hotel motel bed tax. I guess it's $6 or $7 additional million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the saving grace here is that it's got to be focused on developing African-American centric tourism. Do I have it right so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm.
All right. Here's where I'm going with this. The Weeping Times property has got to be the most significant African-American historical site in this city.
At least one of the top 5.
It's so whether it's the most, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, it is such an important historical piece of history to the entire community. If we're going to develop African-American tourism with any authenticity and success, why would we not be thinking ahead and preserving the experience around the Weeping Times? Why would we be building transitional housing right next door to it? It confounds me that we would not connect those two and let common sense prevail in our decision.
Yes, John. So let me say this. We do have some transitional housing in West Savannah, but there are individual houses maybe around Cumming Streets and I think on Newcastle. but the community can absorb some scattered individual houses. We could absorb that impact, but that concentration of that poverty and that shelter there in the heart where our three neighborhoods come together, it is a death, a kiss of death there. Now, we know that the hotel motel tax was 6%, and 8% is the level allowed, the highest level allowed. And so when I was elected and a couple of other alderwomen, and I think it was Carter and Blakely, we all came to the table and we all were saying that we wanted to increase the hotel motel tax. When we, in our first meetings, this came out because we saw that it's money left on the table. Let's bring it into this market. And our thought was, well, my thought, let me speak for me, my thought was, okay, so we don't want to take anything from anyone, that good thing they have going, but if we get the increase, now we could market to the African-American traveler and who are many. Black people travel and they spend lots of money. We travel in the region, we travel internationally. Believe it or not, we do it and spend lots of money. So people come here and what we hear is people come here like, where are the Black folks? You saying this is a 56% African-American community, where are they? We looking everywhere, where are the Black folks? So the Black history, the African-American history has not been built up or built out. So, but people continue to come here, and with these stories now being told, and these stories, we've known these stories forever, but with the powers that be finally recognizing that we have a history, a parallel history too. So now when we went to the table and said that we wanted to increase the hotel motel tax from 6% to 8%, and we were told by some staff members, oh, no, Alderwomen, stay away from that. We tried that before, and the legislature were against it, and the chamber was, all these people were against it, and they fought back, and the council, and so we don't touch that, that's taboo. And so we said, like, look, we don't care. We're not doing business as usual. This is a new council, and we need to get it. So then they looked at it, and I guess the climate had changed, and they said that, okay, we're going to go after that 2%. And however, and let me show you how we're going to spend that. This is what we're going to do. And
I already figured it out.
Okay, so wait a minute. We're here sticking our neck out fighting for this increase, but you guys are fit to run and do what you do with it. And that was a problem. That was a bone of contention right there. Okay, so then we started working on the list of projects that would be funded. And the first district stands to benefit from the increase with Stiles Avenue extension or built up their connectivity with new sidewalks connecting the Canal District to West Savannah. And you know, there was nothing in the plan to build sidewalks for West Savannah. And the reason the whole project is there is to build up the area. So anyway, that money is placed in there. And then the Community Market Entrepreneur Center for the Waterworks building, 10 million is in there for that. I didn't get the money for West Bay Street west of the viaduct, but we were thinking that that money could come from Greenscapes just to do some beautification and some trees and some flower pots and some benches, you know, because they have some millions, but they want to go from MLK to the viaduct and stop it right there. So that was important, but that money isn't in there. But I'm told that money could come from somewhere else, and I'm okay with that, as long as it gets done, and I'll stay on that. So the first district did stand to benefit, and I needed to support that for the sake of the first district, but I wasn't satisfied in that all of the money was going to.
I think we're in agreement with you about there's some great stuff in this additional 2%. You know, it's some long overdue projects for expanding what type of tourism we're going to promote. But those who know us know that we are really about the economic underpinnings that produce the excess social problems. So the excess social problem is absent poverty, right? Just poverty, right? High density poverty, all right? So we're splitting the first 6% of this tax 50-50 with Visit Savannah. Well, actually, as a matter of fact, if I'm mistaken, John, the state comes in and takes the first 15%, and then we split the next big pot with Visit Savannah. this is an organization whose sole responsibility is to promote tourism, an industry who historically has underpaid our citizens, right? These are the low-paying jobs that clean our hotels and cook our food in the kitchens downtown, right? And I think our position is, why are we trusting this organization whose CEO makes $390,000 a year, right? You know, I would have loved to have done that deal if Visit Savannah would have voluntarily given us half of their half back. You know, we got police to pay for, we got fire to pay for, we got services to provide that all of this tourism industry enjoys. They get the same police, they get better police protection than most of the neighborhoods since they're in the downtown area. They get better trash pickup, better beautification services. I don't get why we're giving them that base half of the big pot of the main group when we need that money for our general fund budget. We need that money for core services. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, based on the state legislature, there are certain ways that that money could be spent, and who needs to disseminate the funds. It's in the state in the state law. So it's been a fight to get just what we have, because when we first had this discussion, for instance, the Waterworks building that is being pegged for our community market and entrepreneur center was going to receive $4 million, and the trail, the Tide to Town trail, was going to get 10 million. So how could you give a market that people could go in with incubator businesses and could help build up the community and build up the economy of the community, 4 million, and a trail, not that, and see, people get this wrong. I understand the advents and how a trail could impact the health of a community. But when you're talking priorities for a struggling and a dying community, you're going to put 10 million in a trail and 4 million in an entrepreneur center and community market. So I had to push back on that. That just didn't make any sense. So now both of those projects are in for 10 million, and I'm not fighting that. The trail is fine. It's still not the highest priority, but there's so many people who want that. So, you know, it doesn't make sense to push against that. But Chuck, you're absolutely right. And that was, in the end, the problem with passing or with people being against it is just what you said, because the Visit Savannah was still going to be over and administer all of those funds. Now, the compromise, those air quotes, that was made is that they would create a diversity plan and hire an African-American to administer the diversity plan. And they would have to report to council once a year. And after 3 years, we could institute some changes. And the fight had gone on so long, and we could not get a good resolve on that. And in the end, I did vote for it because of the benefit of what was coming for the first district. So that
I just think what you just described, and this is not commentary on you, Alderwoman Lanier, it just sounds like the old bureaucratic shuffle. You know, we're gonna bring somebody in, and you know, it's gonna be somebody who used to sit on the airport commission or the bond authority, and it doesn't matter if they're black or white, right? They'll find somebody who will sign off on what they want them to sign off on. And I worry that it takes the authority of the decisioning out of the elected officials that we voted for.
And I agree with you, but we live to fight another day. We got some things and we live to fight another day. We could have turned the whole table over and walked away, but we didn't have 5 votes to do that. We live to fight another day.
Yeah, I want to get 2 more issues in, because I know you've been very generous with your time, and I'm very appreciative. But 2 more final issues to wrap up on. This is the rules package that was changed in April of 2020. We have been pounding on this because we all watch. You know, we watch these meetings ever since the beginning. Almost all of them, almost all of the entire meeting, and it seems like that change seems to be the singular source of division on council. You mentioned it's a 5-4 council on many major issues. And the source of that division definitely happened around COVID in the spring of 2020. But that vote, which was 5-4, which you voted against, I want to remind our viewers what that did. It changed a 25-year precedent on city council where any member used to be able to put something on the agenda under their name, which could then be discussed and voted upon. And now it takes 5 members of council just to get something on the agenda.
It's tyranny.
It's tyranny. This
Yeah.
is ridiculous. This is King Van controlling the agenda, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop. And I want your thoughts on this issue.
Well, I think it's a very bad policy, and that change was a bad change because there's only 2 ways now you could get something on the agenda. It either has to be placed on there by the mayor and the city manager, or you would need 5 votes. And in the case of the way this council has been divided on many issues, if there are 4 other council people who routinely vote with the mayor, you're going to rarely see a break in those votes. So if you really look at this thing, and if you had 4 council people voting one way and 4 voting another, the mayor would be the tiebreaker. So at the end of the day, the mayor is making the decisions because he could go one way with the 4 or he could go the other way. And so
Let's watch that.
it's in his lap, and that's where. And so we don't have 5 votes to even change that, Chuck. So it's a huge problem.
I agree with you. I think what you just said is correct. Given that there are 2 camps of 4, and that the mayor is the deciding vote, everything is basically on the mayor's shoulders. This is his term. This is his administration.
Mayor is the decider in chief.
And the biggest failure, which is the other issue I wanted to talk about, and I'll let you pop in here in a second, John, but I mean, it is the mayor's fault. A human resources professional of 20 plus years, a 5-term member of this council, that you guys could not hire a city manager. The single most important decision. He failed. He failed us because this is the mayor. How can he not deliver a consensus on the most important decision?
That operation there, it was so disheartening and disappointing because I saw some excellent, in my opinion, having local government experience and hiring experience. There were 2 particular candidates that would have been perfect and done a great job for Savannah. But it didn't happen. We should have been able to hire from the pool that we had. And it just didn't happen because of politics, not because we did not have qualified people.
I
It
agree.
didn't happen because of internal conflict and politics.
All I want to say, Chuck, was I've seen 3rd world countries have town hall meetings with more openness and access than we have in Savannah. And I'm not stretching the truth too far when I say that. I do want to loop back around and make just 2 parting comments on the whole expansion of tourism. This additional 2 cents was a golden opportunity to discuss with the Tourism Leadership Council and Visit Savannah, the power players in this equation. They can't keep paying $9.25 an hour they employ roughly 30,000 people. That was the moment when some discussion on elevating wages doesn't have to jump to $15 an hour, but there's a lot of real estate between $9.25 and $15, and I think that was a missed opportunity. It was a leadership void at the top on that. Everyone campaigned significantly and fiercely to try to address wages in that sector, which it's so large now. I mean, it's 6 times the number of people that are employed at the port are employed in hospitality. And yet we just gifted them an additional $6 or $7 million without any negotiation.
Well, I mean, I think there was some negotiation, John. I just don't think.
Okay.
I think our position is that there was not enough about raw economic benefits,
Yeah.
right? You know, I mean, if we were able to take 9 million of their share of the base share and add it to the general fund, I mean, Bernetta, what would $9 million to your general fund do? You know, a year, permanent recurring revenue.
John mentioned a third world country, and as I ride around the first district, and there's some areas, and this is just true because I get to travel internationally. And you know, I've been to Mexico, I've been to several countries in Africa, I've been to Canada, and Canada is the cleanest country I've ever gone to. But lately, what I'm seeing here in the first district, it reminds me of a third world country. And if you just ride through Telfair or Tremont or West Gwinnett and see the tires and the mattresses and it's everywhere. And the problem is getting worse. I think we're not picking up the litter like we're used to, the illegal dumping. We're not doing a good job with that. So we're doing all of this tourism and all of this, but we're not really doing well with our basic services. And the constituents, you know, your heart go out to people and you want to fight for them. You want to get it done. And our hands are tied because we can't speak to staff under a certain level, you know, under the assistant city manager level. And then you send emails in about these people's plight and you feel like you're burdening staff and you're aggravating them and they can't get anything done because you're always writing emails. But ride around, look around, and it's horrendous. And people shouldn't have to live with those type conditions. I suggested a pilot program because we did a major cleanup on the west side, and I'm always working teens and working with teenagers out here. And I paid them and I put them to work. And I got some teens and trucks and we went around and cleaned some lanes and we cleaned some areas, and it was successful. And what we realized is that we need to do more of this, but we need to put it in the form of a pilot program where the people who live in the area could clean up an area, but they could get paid to do it and some stipends. And I submitted that and asked for some numbers and wanted to just create a pilot program for the first district. If it worked, we could have done it throughout the city. And that was probably a year ago.
Well, look, you know, we need institutional change. I mean, we had a whirlwind election where we thought we had a bunch of change at council and it's still divided. But it's really hard to get institutional change here when you got folks like Michael Traynor being hired as the CEO of Union Mission. You know, I mean, this is a message, you know, and I think your election, along with these other women, with people like Derek Malo, who are now stepping into a new leadership generation, these institutional partners of Savannah, the ports, SCAD, Visit Savannah, Tourism Leadership Council, Union Mission, Salvation Army, the folks who are on the boards, the folks who have been running these institutions for the last, these people and institutions got us to where we are. They're not going to be the ones that are going to get us to where we want to go. And we need to start putting pressure on these institutional partners if they want to still be partners. Because I'll be honest with you, I hope, my hope would be that Visit Savannah is no longer our CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau partner in 4 or 5 years. I don't think they're a good partner strategically for where Savannah is trying to go. But again, that's just my opinion, right? I would much rather see an institution, a 501c7 that has got a more heart for the problems we're talking about here, take over that contract. But Bernetta, Alderwoman Lanier, I want to just give you a chance to wrap up some conclusion thoughts or throw some things out here. We had a bunch of stuff to talk about, and you were very excellent in your questions. So just give us some parting thoughts of your own before we wrap up.
Well, in Savannah, we pick winners and losers, and that's unfortunate. And we do it under the guise of our public positions. And you have some organizations and some companies that are legacy beneficiaries from the city of Savannah's coffers, from our community chest. And we're going to have to change that. And so, again, like I said, Chuck, sometimes you fight and you get all you can get, and you have to live the fight another day. And so we're falling and working towards a better resolve where we have a more equitable and sustainable and resilient community. It's interesting that we all want the same thing, but we shouldn't get there at the expense of other people, especially people that have been generationally, underserved and underinvested in. But again, when people watch the way that I operate and legislate on council, keep in mind that I'm sitting here in the first district. And when you talk about point of view, we could go to the theater, you could sit in the balcony, I could sit on the front row, somebody could sit to stage left or stage right, but we're all gonna see something differently because we have different points of view. And my point of view is from the point of view of the first district. So the way I advocate, the way I vote, the way I discuss, it's all got to be knowing that I have to contend and deal with my co-counsel people in a way that's going to bring benefits and some type of resolve for the people of the first district. And that's my goal. So next week, I want to talk again about the Salvation Army and the special use permit, and it's on the table for a vote. If council votes no and do not vote to support the special use permit, then we will give the city manager and staff the directive to go back to the table and work with the Salvation Army and other stakeholders and finding a more amenable fit to serve that homeless population. If they vote in favor and allow that use, and they're changing the character of a historic community, they're going to allow a new population to be placed on top of an impoverished population that is a population of single family residential community. And when you bring in a homeless shelter and transitional houses and inject that poverty on the top of poverty, you're setting the community up for failure. So we don't want that and we don't need that. We would like to send out a call of action for your listeners to please help us in sharing and calling your council people and calling the mayor and letting them know. They're saying that it's not the Weeping Time property. We've been studying this. We found out about the Weeping Time in 2008 when we were writing a book for the lowlands and the high roads for West Savannah. And we have been commemorating the property and what happened there with the largest slave sale in the history of the United States since 2014. We've studied this throughout. The original plot was all south of Augusta Avenue to Louisville Road. Today, the property is divided into different portions, and and the particular piece that we're talking about used to be the Francis Bartow property. But even if it is or if it is not, that's irrelevant. It's all sacred ground and it sit right there, a stone throw 50 feet from the Bradley lumber property, which is recognized as the largest piece still intact. And we want an opportunity to build a development that will bring benefits and help uplift the community and for the people that live there, the impoverished people of West Savannah, so we could not be an extremely impoverished community before we maybe move to just poverty and eventually even come out of any of those classifications into just a middle-class community or a viable, thriving community. We got opportunities there. We have, but this is a threat. And so lots of times when you have these conditions, you could turn them around into opportunities. And that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to take what has been done in this community and change it and turn around so we could build wealth in low wealth communities by using asset-based economic development. And our greatest asset in Greater West Savannah is the Weeping Time property.
Awesome. Awesome. Nothing could be more wonderful of an outcome than.
Can I say one last statement, please? I want your listeners to know that with a community benefit agreement, a community benefit strategic approach, wherever you live in Savannah, if there's a development coming near your home, near your community, you should have a right to be able to participate by sitting down and negotiating for benefits for your community. And every other community in this town need to stand with you all to make sure that communities are represented, communities are safe, and that citizens are the primary stakeholders. And at the top of the organizational chart in this incorporation called Savannah, you are stakeholders and you are stockholders, and you deserve a right to be able to have benefits come to your community so you can improve the quality of life for you and your family and your neighbors.
I just want to follow up on what she's saying to our audience. And I know that we're getting to the end of this episode, but it's so important what she just said. A while ago, Bernetta, you said Savannah picks winners and losers. And what the last 25 years of Savannah has been about is that the winners have taken all, right? They've taken it all. They win everything. And that can no longer happen. We're not saying that, you know, the same 5 attorney firms and the same 5 engineering firms and the same 5 developers that seem to always be around these projects, we're not saying that they can't make any money. We're just saying that they got to give up some of it. They got to give up a little so that Savannah can get a lot. And when you do not have this strategic community benefits approach, they will run roughshod. It is called regulatory capture. That is the term. They are looking to get the same resources that you and I as taxpayers need. And so your approach on council is welcome. It is refreshing. You and several of these other alderwomen, the citywide alderwomen especially, have shown a new light and a new direction. And we hope that you will come back and talk to us again as more things develop. Hopefully, as we turn a corner on COVID, maybe one of these days we'll be able to have a live Better Savannah event. We have never really gotten to have one, John, because COVID hit. And so I want to take this time out to talk to our audience and just say, hey, look, producing these weekly shows, it's not easy. I want to thank Carrie Smith, Will Boswell, and John, of course, for all the time and effort that is being put into place. If you appreciate what we're doing, educating the voters, getting these words out and these messages out about important issues, there's several ways you can support this movement we're trying to build. All right. Number one, like the Better Savannah page. All right. Like the page, follow the page. We try to post every other day or so. Sometimes it's just John or I's random thoughts. And sometimes it's really about hard news stories that's going on. All right. Share this video. Share it on your personal page. Share it into private Facebook groups. Copy the link and send it to text message to people. You don't even have to have a Facebook account to see this video. You just have to get the link to the video from somebody sharing it to you, and then you can send it to anybody, right?
Statement, I want to thank you all for the work you do. You make it look easy because you all are so good at it. But people like
I don't know about that.
Let me say this: your programming and what you're doing to shape a true narrative. And there are others in the community that are doing videos and these new programming, a new media, and people are embracing that because the traditional media have not been fair. They have not given a fair account. You could give an interview, and by the time it comes out of the production chopping block, it doesn't sound like what you're saying, and someone think you're this deranged person over in West Savannah, and you said so much, and it never make it. So they haven't been fair. The press, those traditional news accounts and those companies, they're losing viewership and losing confidence because they are not true and balanced. And what you all are doing and the others, I thank you all and I appreciate it. And we have to control the narrative and let your own truth come out. We speak for we.
Better policy is helping everyone. You know, I agree with what you said. I think what ATR is doing is important. I think what we're doing is important because these traditional media sources have failed us. You know, we had Jim Morikis on a few weeks ago who just started his own independent media called The Savannian. This is the future. And if you are blessed in this year, 2021, please go to www.bettersavannah.org and click that join membership button and send us a contribution or send us a membership pledge so that we can continue to do this year and get ready to support progressive candidates. Guys, I want to tell everybody, the school board president's race is in 14 months. All of the primaries for 2022 are in 14 months. Election season is right around the corner. So this year we are doing this educational series. I want to remind everyone that on next week's show, we're going to have columnists from the Decatur newspaper online George Cheedy, and House District 163 Representative State Rep Derek Malo to talk about things going on at the session. John, you got any parting thoughts or anything to share before we end this episode?
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Carrie. Bernetta, all I want to say is you have our heartfelt support and commitment to crafting a better community for everyone here. And I can't thank you enough for the time you've spent with us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you too. You're welcome.
Thanks so much. Go ahead and take us out, John. Have a great night, everybody. Vote no. Call your alderman.
Yep.
Tell them to vote no on the special use. Vote no.